The Lord be with you. Reading from the Holy Gospel according to John. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was in the beginning with God. All things came to be through him, and without him nothing came to be. What came to be through him was life, and this life was the light of the human race. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. A man named John was sent from God. He came for testimony to testify to the light, so that all might believe through him. He was not the light, but came to testify to the light. The true light which enlightens everyone was coming into the world. He was in the world, and the world came to be through him, but the world did not know him. He came to what was his own, but his own people did not accept him. But to those who did accept him, he gave the power to become children of God, to those who believe in his name, who were born not by natural generation, nor by human choice, nor by a man's decision, but of God. And the Word became flesh and made his dwelling among us. And we saw his glory, the glory as of the Father's only begotten Son, full of grace and of truth. John testified to him and cried out, saying, "This was he of whom I said, 'The one who is coming after me ranks ahead of me, because he existed before me.' From his fullness we have all received grace in place of grace. Because while the law was given through Moses, grace and truth came through Jesus Christ. No one has ever seen God. The only begotten Son, God, who is at the Father's side, has revealed him." The Gospel of the Lord. Please be seated for a moment. We're all going to have to get used to tomorrow writing on our checks and other documents 2016. Remember when we were in school, you'd keep writing 1982 for like 3 months. I guess I dated myself in some way. And I guess that's part of all change, right? 1 year passes, a new one comes. And I guess it all depends on your perspective. When you're young, you're always looking forward to something, right? So when you're in grammar school, you look forward to high school, right? You can't wait to get there. You want to get out of this room that you have to sit in for 8 hours. Though I think now they change classes even in grammar school. They didn't back in my day, probably not in yours as well. And then you couldn't wait, once you were in high school, to do what next? To get your driver's license. Can't wait to get behind the wheel, have my own car. And then you keep on waiting for something else, to graduate high school, go to college, or go to work. And then you can't wait to get married or look into some type of vocation for yourself. And then I guess this isn't meant in any way to look bleakly on life, but I guess as the older you get, you look to heaven, right? This is a truth. Maybe a truth we sometimes don't want to accept right away. St. Augustine would say a lot of times in different varying aspects of his life, "Lord, I am ready, but not yet." Right? And I think that goes for all of us. I think when it comes to heaven, there's part of us that longs for that. But there's also a part of us that longs for this life, if we're honest with ourselves. I was talking to a friend older than me just a few days ago, and he says, I'm never sure if I'm ever going to be ready. Now, he's a man of faith, because he says there's always something to do here. He already has grandchildren and all of this. I want to see them grow up, and I want to see them have success in life and graduate high school and college. I said, well, if that's the case, then you're going to want them to get married, and then you're going to have great-grandchildren, and you're going to want the same again. Eventually, you have to leave it in the Lord's hands, right? This whole concept of giving up the Spirit, you've heard of it in Scripture. Jesus does it at the cross. "Father, into your hands I commend my spirit." Also, St. Stephen, as he's being stoned to death, and both were young men. These guys were not old. Again, he says, into your hands, Father, I commend my spirit. Can I do that? I'm asking myself that personally, and I guess I'm asking you as well. And I guess the answer, again, is probably mostly yes, but there's also some no in there. And, I think that the Lord gives us the instinct to live. All right, so let's not kid ourselves. The Lord gives us this instinct to live and not to die. Because if he didn't give us the instinct to live, we would all lay down our lives much earlier than expected. But we have this push, this motivation, and the Lord gives us that instinct not for selfish reasons, but to do good, to live the gospel, to live this grace and truth that Jesus was teaching us. Right? So no matter how many years you have, whether you're here only for a short time or if you're blessed enough to live here till you're 95 or 100, it has to be to do the good. To do the good as Jesus gives us in the gospel that we heard today. So I guess there's a lot to reflect on the last day of the year, and I'm sure resolutions are flying through your mind. And sometimes that's good, sometimes it's not. Because the Lord usually wants us to live where? In the moment, today. Anytime we try to make promises forever, what happens 3 days from now? Out the window they go. But I think if we live in the moment, capture the moment, then the future really we're not concerned about the future. Because any concern of the future brings anxiety, and any concern of the past brings guilt and shame. Because you're looking back to try to fix something. So let us live in this moment. Kind of how time stands still, even as the gospel opened. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God. That's Jesus. Always in the moment with his Father. Let us try and do the same. God bless you. Please stand. Let us turn to God in prayer for our needs, trusting that